Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a fourth in a series of an evening with Senator Michael Moore. I'm, of course, everybody knows, Joe Coggins, and we have the good senator with us here once again. And Senator, it's great seeing you once again. And
likewise. So isn't this an evening with Joe Coggins and Mike Moore? Or?
well, no, it's an evening with Senator Moore,
Okay.
hosted by Joe Coggins.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
what the way the thing reads on the TV, so we'll go with that.
So
Tonight it's about you, and since we taped our last show, an awful lot of things have gone on down in Boston.
Yes, yeah, quite a bit.
And I plan to address, if not all, at least most of what I consider, and what you consider the most important legislation that has transpired. Every day must be an adventure in Boston.
Oh, it is. It really is. There's new issues that are coming up. Even when we think we've got issues resolved, you're finding out there are loopholes that you may have missed or corrections that have to be made. One thing that they've talked about is this legislative session. It's a 2-year session, but the 6 months that we've been in session right now, the legislature has actually passed more significant changes or pieces of legislation in this 6 months than they usually do in the 2-year cycle. To have the budget done within 6 months and to have 3 major reforms, pieces of legislative reforms passed in the same period, from what I'm being told by other senators and reps, is unprecedented for the state legislature. So, and we're still working on additional reforms, hopefully. So it's been interesting.
What I want to talk about is, and there was a lot to be said about this, but I don't think people really understand exactly this pension reform bill that was before you. And so I guess I'm going to kind of ask for the Reader's Digest version of just exactly what it was and what it is.
Well, basically, they looked at the entire state pension system, and they looked at loopholes which they were looking at state employees or former elected officials were using to get early retirements or to add benefits to their state pension, which we thought were not going with the intent of why they were first passed. Some of these reforms, some of these issues that we changed were actually initiated back in 1957 or the late 50s, so they've actually been in place for over 50 years.
What happened?
Well, what happened? People started misusing them. Like this one in the pension reform. One of the clauses that we changed is what they call the 1 day, 1 year rule, which, from what I'm being told by more senior legislators, is that a lot of these people didn't even know it existed until it recently started getting used. Where if you work 1 day in the following year, you get credit that whole year credit to your pension. So that with this pension reform is now gone. We've actually removed that. You can no longer do that. Another change that we've looked at it's called the termination allowance, and that's where if your term ends and you decide not to run for re-election, it was considered, they were filing for retirement, considering it to be terminated, their employment with the state to be terminated, or if they ran and they lost, they would then file under this termination allowance for a retirement benefit, which would allow you to a 50% retirement. So that was another change that we made. That is no longer in effect. We've also got a disability clause where I think we might have read about it or seen it on TV, where they've had some public employees, more from the eastern part of the state, that were in a position of a superior for a very short period of time. But while they were in that, because their superior may have been out of work, well, while they're in that position, they would get hurt or disabled. They were able to retire under that higher salary or that higher position, even though they weren't in it long enough to get the required credible service. But because they were in a temporary position, they were able to retire under a higher salary and higher benefit classification. That is no longer changing. Now you have to be in that position, I think, for over 12 months. Now for you actually to lay claim to the classification for that retirement. We've also got regular compensation. I think if we remember back to Bill Bulger, when he was the former president, he retired from the state, or actually from, I think it was UMass, he was president, right. The chancellor. He was trying to get added to his pension, the car, the lodging, other perks that he was getting. Well, we actually defined what regular compensation is now so that you cannot add those perks into your retirement. Such as right now, I get parking at the State House. The parking, they've established the value of that parking space that I get. So each week I pay, when I get my paycheck, I pay taxes on the value of that. And it is no longer eligible to be calculated into my retirement. So there are perks like that. So now your compensation now is going to be based on your salary. You cannot add these other, you can't get housing, automobile usage, those types of things added into your pension, the value of your pension.
Not that I would be fighting for them or for elected officials to get some of these things, but if you, my thought would be that if you're paying taxes on it, then it's really part of your salary, and why wouldn't it be figured into your pension? And I hope people don't misconstrue what I'm asking out there.
Well, that actually was hotly debated.
I bet it was.
Where they're now being taxed on it, it should be calculated into it. But where this was such a hot issue, perception-wise to the public, it was pretty much determined that we would leave it the way it's going to be right now, where you could not add it into your regular compensation, because there was so much negative press to it.
I got a feeling if someone takes that to court, I think they're going to win it. So,
well, and that's, at that point, if someone does take it to court and win it, then the law would have to be changed.
Now,
So-
on this pension reform, it also affects people, and I do not collect a pension, by the way, or will not collect a pension when I leave the Board of Selectmen, okay? So I'm just asking this question because I think this needs to be clarified for a lot of our elected officials out there that watch the show. And I want to know, if, say I was to run tomorrow for the first time, and the salaries for a selectman was $5,000, which it's not, would I be eligible for a pension at the end of so many years?
Yes, as long as the salary exceeds $5,000. Right, previous to this, you could have been making a salary of $1 when you worked at the sheriff's office.
Right.
You could have taken your retirement from the sheriff's office with your years of service on the Board of Selectmen. If you would have to have left the Board of Selectmen at the same time that you would have been retiring from the sheriff's office. You could have at that point calculated the value of your salary into your sheriff's salary, and that would have been the basis for your retirement.
By the way, I chose not to do that and stayed on the board. That's
right. And actually, because you're still on the board, you would not be able to do that. I don't think you would have been able to do it even if you didn't make the change. I think some of these people are getting a bad rap. First, because this was a legal process people were utilizing. The law allowed for this.
Right.
So, I mean, now if they were to try it and when they weren't entitled to it, then yes, I think there's a legitimate complaint. But now, even now, if you have a selectman or a school committee person making over $5,000, you can still retire, use that salary, and add that to your years of your regular compensation as a state employee to factor that into your retirement. So you can still do it, just that there's very few selectmen or local officials who are making over that $5,000 salary cap. What you'll have now is like a city councilor or some of a higher, a bigger municipality making that value.
And by the way, and you said it, and I'm going to reaffirm it. There was absolutely nothing illegal about what these elected officials were doing, whether it be your local officials or not. When I ran 12 years ago for the Board of Selectmen, I did not run with the intention of getting a pension on what amounts to $3,000 a year, because it wouldn't be a whole heck of a lot. And I'm sure other folks that run for the same seat or school committee or whatever was not thinking pension when they ran for the job.
Right.
Okay, so just to clarify that out there, we have some good people in office, and I wouldn't want to lose them because
it's
of
hard
a perception.
It's hard to get people to run for office. So
It
you have to
is.
volunteer.
And I think people have to understand, and it's not because I'm one, and I'm talking on a part-time basis, but I think people have to understand there are some perks you have to give up for for part-time elected officials if you want to maintain good government, because obviously they're not running for the money.
Right.
Okay? So if it meant giving a selectman, say, a parking spot for free
Right.
in front of the town hall, then that's carrying it to the
Too far.
extreme. But that's my point. I think we all like to know that we're appreciated at some point, and I'm still waiting.
Well, everyone lets you know you're appreciated.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I don't know if that's an appreciation, but they do let me know. But I want to move on, Senator,
Okay.
and because another thing that was very much in the news since we last.
Well, actually, one more thing about the pensions,
Oh,
if you're going
yeah.
to move on, is state employees had to work 10 years to be vested into the state retirement system.
Right.
Prior to this, it was 6 years for elected officials. We've now bumped that up to 10 years. So now that's consistent. You've got to be elected in an office for 10 years to be vested into the state pension system. So now it coincides with every other state employee.
See, that would be tough for your local elected officials because they're 3-year terms, so you really have to run for a 4th term
Yeah.
and resign after the first year if you were so inclined. However, I don't think anybody's going to be running after a pension on $5,000 a year, because that wouldn't really amount to a whole heck of a lot a year. I haven't done the math, but I don't even think it computes,
Yeah, probably not.
you know. But I'll have to ask someone that does collect a pension. I think it's something like $46 a month under the old system. I don't know what it would be under the new system. But I think somebody told me they got $46 a month or something like that.
Added on top of it?
Well, no, that was it. They get $46 a month. I mean, they didn't have a state job. They were an elected person for X number of years, and they get something like $46, $50 a month. And that hardly is life-changing.
Would that
money.
add them into the health insurance, though?
Well, that would, yeah, I think it would. I think it would.
So I think that would actually be the more costly aspect of it than the health.
Well, yeah, it would be if, in fact, that was the case. Now, is that still set up so that if I would think it would be, even under the pension reform, that the medical aspect of it stays the same
Once you're vested and you're entitled to that.
after the 10 years.
Yes, after the 10 years.
So the only thing that's really changed is the 6 years, from 6 years
Yes,
to 10
to
years.
6 years to 10 years.
But that's a lot.
Oh, it is. It is.
You know, and it certainly will save the taxpayers some money.
Yes, yeah, no, definitely will.
You know.
Long term. That's one thing, when we were doing these reforms, out of the 3 reforms that we did, the pension reform, you've got a long-term savings. The ethics reform, there really isn't a dollar value savings that we're getting for right now, but perception-wise, it's hopefully the public realizes that we're intent on trying to clean up government. Transportation is really the biggest reform that we're going to see a lot of income return in revenue, where they're projecting a $6.5 billion return over 20 years. So that's where we're going to see a lot of the financial revenues coming back to the state. So.
Oh, that's good. That's excellent. And I think it was long overdue.
Oh, it was.
It was absolutely long overdue, and it was legislation. And I suppose that's easy for me to say, but I worked a legitimate 40 hours a week, and I put in 28 years with the system. So whether I worked for the state or worked for private enterprise, I worked my full complement to collect my pension. And trust me, my pension is not a lot of money. All right, but I survive.
I'm sure you do.
I'm a survivor, Senator. But another reform bill, like I say, a lot went on since we did this show in June. The ethics reform.
Yes.
I have a bazillion questions about this, but I'm going to hold it. I'm going to let you kind of explain. You ran a seminar a couple of years ago for us elected officials, and I think I've mentioned this before. It was as much as I thought I knew the ethics laws. There was a couple of things that I didn't realize until I went to that seminar, and it was an excellent seminar. But having said that, I find now in your opinion, do you think maybe we've gone now to the other extreme?
In some cases, yes. As we were talking before the show, Some of the definition for a lobbyist is gone to the extreme. If you have a nonprofit, or as we like, just to say the Lions Club, for example, if you were a member of the Lions Club and you were sitting here in Millbury in an office and you were trying to develop the strategy on how to get some legislation passed in the State House, if you exceeded, I think it's 26 hours per year, even though you've never stepped foot in the State House, you've never made a call to a senator or a representative, the fact that you helped planning and strategize on that legislation, if it exceeded 26 hours a year, that you would have to register as a lobbyist. So that's going to now make it very cumbersome for nonprofits or just any group where you have to factor in all the background people doing work that don't even deal with the legislature.
How do you police that?
I have no idea. I don't know how we're going to police it.
Is it one of those laws that it makes the legislators feel good, but they really don't have a way to?
Well, I think it makes the public, hopefully it's making the public feel better that we are trying to clean up how government is going to interact with lobbyists.
All right, another example, just to simplify this for everybody, another example, and we had talked about this before we sat down to do the show. Say after the show here, you and I go to lunch, and while we're having supper, I should say, and while we're there, you say to me, you know, Joe, I have an opportunity to bring some monies into Millbury, and this is how we're going to do it, and you know, I very much want to see my community get whatever it is. And I say, well, that's great, Mike. Thanks for working on that. Millbury certainly can use this extra money. And when the check comes, I know people are going to find this hard to believe, but I go for it and I go to pay the check. Technically speaking, I can't do that.
No. Technically speaking now, well, here's a good example. Do you remember reading in the paper how the governor had sent the Senate president a bouquet of flowers, the speaker a box of cigars after they had agreed on some budgetary issues?
Yeah.
Well, technically, by this change we made, that is a felony and that's a violation. Any gift that deals with your legislative interaction or your work with the legislature would constitute a violation of the ethics law. So even if you and I can establish a long-term friendship, then there are some exclusions to that. If you can show a friendship that goes outside of the realm of your work related to being a legislator or local elected officials. That's one thing that people have to understand is these changes we made don't just affect the senators and representatives and constitutional officers. These go right down to the selectmen, school committee, planning board. All local elected officials are going to now be covered by these changes.
So you never have to buy me dinner again, is what you're saying?
Never again. But I can't accept one either now, too.
Yeah, right. I mean,
So.
I guess it kind of worked both ways for you.
Yeah.
But in all honesty, and all kidding aside, do you think this has strengthened the Ethics Commission, or do you think we're making an organization that we definitely need? I see a definite need for ethics, and I've been taken to task myself by the Ethics Commission, having won those occasions, but nonetheless, I can see the point of having it.
Yep.
But if we made it cumbersome for them to function, it made it worse than what it was before. Was it at a comfortable level? I guess the question I'm asking, was it a comfortable level before, and now it has become, even they're not going to be sure what's what?
I don't know if it was at a comfortable level before, because just the limited time that I've been there were issues that had come up as part of the budget process, even as far as these reforms go, that we would call over to the Ethics Commission. The Senate Council would be calling over to the Ethics Commission for legal opinions. And in the morning at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, we're getting one opinion. Later in the afternoon, we were getting an opinion that contradicted the first opinion. So the fact that, and this was one of the concerns that we have with this, the fact that the regulatory agency is giving conflictory opinions does raise some level for concern. That have we made the laws so confusing or complex that it's going to be hard to get a clear definition of this? I mean, there's going to be some issues here. There's going to be some people who may be taken to task that legitimately made a mistake, that didn't know or may have gotten the wrong opinion. But hopefully the system will work out. I mean, we had the chairman of the State Ethics Commission come over and address us, and I mean, as long as this individual is there, I mean, he was very understanding of the situation. He did say it's going to be a learning curve for everyone. We're going to need to get some clarification on some of these regulatory changes. But if you have that mindset, I think then everything will move ahead smoothly. If you get someone in there who reads the law verbatim, then there could be issues. I mean, there were issues that we were voting on that senators who had been in office 10, 12 years had never been questioned about whether there was an ethics violation, where now we were being made to report, fill out disclosure forms, so that you wouldn't be violating the ethics laws. So, I mean, legitimately, there are questions come up. If it wasn't a violation 10 years ago or 6 years ago and the laws hadn't changed, why is it a violation now? It really was just a different interpretation of the current statutes which had been in effect.
Well, let's put a twist on that. Say I ran for state representative, which, by the way, I'm not. But say I ran for state representative and was a state representative, and being a member of the Millbury Lions Club, legislation came before me. Now, even though I don't collect a salary from the Lions Club, nor do I benefit personally from it, would it be an ethics violation for me under the new system? Would it be an ethics violation for me to vote on something that would have a direct effect on Lions throughout the Commonwealth?
It possibly could, but you have the option of filing a disclosure of a potential.
Like I do here.
Right, of
Or
potential.
did here.
Well, here's an issue. Now, this had never come up before. As we all know, my brother's a sergeant on the police force.
Right.
The Quinn bill was being hotly debated. Mm-hmm. Well, prior to this legislative term, other legislators who have had relationships, relatives who were in the same situation, were allowed to vote on those issues. Myself, the chairman of Senate Ways and Means, and Senator Ken Donnelly, all three of us had relatives, brothers, who were on police forces getting the Quinn bill. We were all told that we could not vote on that issue, we could not discuss it. Even if I wanted to vote if I wanted to do away with it, I didn't believe in the concept of it, we wouldn't be able to vote on it, whether it benefited or hurt the individual.
So you were taken out of the mix
Yes.
on that bill?
Yeah.
Well, that's being pretty lucky. You know?
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, it isn't in the fact that you've got communities like Millbury, Worcester, Grafton, I think Auburn. It's another form of local aid cut, because now these four towns have to pick up the full cost of the Quinn bill now, where the state was picking up the 50%. So now, you know, I could not even go to the not the chairman, but the person from the Senate Ways and Means, Senator Brewer, and advocate, say, look, fund these programs because it's going to be another local aid cut. So.
And for that matter, you couldn't take a call from, say, the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, or from the town manager, or from any one of the members of the board saying, hey, Mike, how about this, you know, at least get us through, you know, until the contract, you know, the contract expires, because we're committed through contract on the Quinn bill.
Right.
You couldn't even really discuss that with us.
Couldn't discuss that. Yep. And actually, and this is how far I went, the chairman of Senate Ways and Means, Senator Pangiatakis, actually develops and goes over every line item of the Senate budget. When it came to that one line item, he had to exclude himself from that whole process.
Really?
We had another senator had to come in and just deal with that issue. So that's how strict they were getting as far as their interpretation of some of the ethics laws.
Well, you know, I guess that would be subject. Sometimes things like that can be subject to debate, and I don't want to debate it because we can go on for days, hours for sure. But sometimes I think, and I think you might agree, that you tighten things too tight, and your chances of abuse become greater than they were when things were maybe a little looser.
Well, there's actually one senator who was an attorney who actually brought up a good point, that the premise that the premise of laws, or people following the laws, are that they're supposed to be able to understand the laws. The fact that we are now passing statutes or regulations that even the regulatory agency is getting confusing, is giving contradictory opinions, how does that equate to the average person now who has to read that law and then make the determination that I'm going to follow this? If you have the regulatory agency that's giving contradicting opinions.
Well, you know, to be honest with you, when this bill initially came up, you know, I mean, it made me a little gun shy to even take a cup of coffee. Not having someone buy you a cup of coffee is a big deal, but the point is, and it lays true for every elected person or anyone in the public eye that people see all the time. If average John citizen pulls up in a no parking area and leaves his or her car there, nothing is said.
Right.
But if I was to pull my car, or you would have pulled your car into that same spot, everybody would have gone, yeah, look at that, he's a selectman or he's a senator, he thinks he can park any place he wants. Well, I don't think any of us want to be perceived as abusing our position, okay?
Correct.
And like I wouldn't want to be sitting in a restaurant and have somebody that I know sitting at the bar buying me dinner. It would look bad because he really shouldn't or she really shouldn't.
But you have to look at now that you have long-standing relationships now with people that because of these changes, just because of where someone may work, you can't. If I want to do a favor for you now, buy you dinner, we go out after this now. I want to buy you dinner. I can't buy you dinner. That's
that really is lousy, Mike.
yeah, no, it is. Oh, I'm saying so. I mean, so I do agree that the laws may have gotten too strict.
Yeah,
but I think at some point there will be a swing. Government always overreacts.
I mean, all things being equal, when you and I have gone out to dinner after the show, we very rarely talk about government. I mean, we talk about everything but. I'm not saying that if there was something going on that I wouldn't ask you or you wouldn't ask me for my help or I would ask you for your help or however these things work. It always works for the benefit of the community. It certainly doesn't. I mean, your job is to bring things forward. My job, along with my colleagues,
is to bring
on
things
the board,
forward to me.
is to bring things forward to you. So I mean, and ultimately, hopefully, that we get somewhere so that it benefits
the community, the people we
the
represent.
community, the district that you represent, and the community that the selectmen represent. Yeah. So,
and actually, before we get off restaurants, I just want to mention, while we're on this, that myself and Senator Chandler, we worked with the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce. We're actually going to be sponsoring. Well, the chamber is going to be sponsoring what's called Worcester Restaurant Week, and it's going to be throughout my district, which is obviously a third of the city of Worcester, then Leicester, Auburn, Millbury, Grafton, Shrewsbury, and Upton, and then Senator Chandler's district, which is Holden, Princeton, West Boylston. Restaurant Week, where you can get meals for $20.09, a 3-course meal during this time frame. So the purpose of this is actually to help small business, the family-run businesses, during the summer when people may be gone on vacation and it's tough to get people to come in. So
I see you've been very busy in the district. I want to congratulate you on undertaking the honorary chairman for the food drive for the Jeremiah Inn in the city of Worcester. It's obvious that you've made your presence known in the 7 months that you've been our state senator, and that people are recognizing that you're out there. You read everything. I mean, every time I talk to people, they'll say, oh, Senator Moore was here, or Senator Moore was there, and God bless you, and God bless your family.
Oh, thank you.
So some of the things we didn't get to tonight, we will get to on next month's show. I want to thank Rita Sullivan for her fine job.
Actually, I want to thank Rita for helping me with my attire for tonight.
Yeah, well, I was going to say she dressed you, literally. But so until the next show, folks, good legislating, and we'll see you real soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.